in action. Rules that keep things going smoothly and fairly. Rules that help us get where we're going. Help us work together, play together, and live together. Of course, in small groups, we sometimes get along without rules.
But there aren't any loud noises, just the sounds of working. We call these work sounds. Listen.
When many of us play together, rules make the game. Rules help us play fair with each other, so all can enjoy the game. Rules that apply equally to all. It's up to each one of us to know the rules and follow them.
Why do you suppose this room is so quiet? Perhaps we can learn from the teacher.
At New York's Madison Square Garden, a city college quintet faces five basket fancy red boots from the University of Oregon. It's the opening contest of an intersectional doubleheader, and New York draws 2 points worth of first blood.
And you know, we have found that knowing when to be quiet is a part of growing up.
16,000 fans watch the boys from the Pacific Coast as they try to stem the onslaught of City College fever. But it's all over when Silverstein shoots off the hardwood, decades the ball, and the ball game for CCNY 38-36.
Because a quiet room helps all of us learn.
How do you do it?
Well, each of us knows how to work quietly. That's very important.
But the evening sports sport is a long way from the locker room. In the second game, a team of Northwestern Wildcats is matched against St. John's University of Brooklyn. The lads from Illinois are off to a springboard start when Bob Coble eases the Allen into the basket to take the lead.
Do you think you could walk this quietly? Listen to this work sound.
But tribal warfare comes to the gymnasium as the St. John's Indians retaliate with 2 points. From now on, the game is touch and go, with 10 men helping to get it there. A beautiful display of teamwork, and Northwestern gets in the number column with sharpshooting Clark Coble doing the honors.
Hello, everyone. We have a quick technical difficulty here where somehow Rex was not on the channel, but hello, everyone. What's old is new, and today we're going to learn the game. And something has come across what I've heard of some new news is that Vern Mikkelsen has been coined as a power forward. Now, for me, this is something that I don't understand why it's happening. Is this really just a copycat position for the center position? Are they really trying to break up the forward designation farther down than what it needs to be? I'm unsure. And I don't know if this is going to ruin modern basketball. But before we get into this conversation, Rex, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing fine. I feel like I should be wearing my bowler.
That must be something new because I've never heard of it. What is a bowler? I don't even know what a bowler is.
It's a little round hat that they used to wear back in the day.
Okay. Kind of like anyway, yeah, I know what you're talking about. But today we're going to talk about Vern Mikkelsen and the power forward position. And really, what do you think about the designation of the power forward with Vern Mikkelsen being coined as the first one? And how do you think it affected, has put an effect on basketball during the beginning stages of the NBA, and how much do you think it's affected where we live in 2025?
Well, essentially, how it came about was Vern Mikkelsen was a center, high school, college, right? 6'7", 230. Back when basketball was an aerobic event, it was about running, endurance event. And so guys were thinner because you ran so much more. But what happened was they had Mikkelsen, and Mikkelsen was by far the greatest player in basketball at the time, late 40s, going into 1950. And he got hacked and cheap shot all the time. So they went and got Vern Mikkelsen out of a small college in Minnesota and had him play alongside Mikkelsen to take some of the rebounding pressure off of Mikkelsen, but also very upfront and very publicly to be the enforcer. He was the Charles Oakley, the first Charles Oakley. He had skill. He could shoot a little jumper. He could mix it up, with different shots inside. He was a good free throw shooter. He was a good dribbler for his size, but you weren't expected to dribble when you played that position. And he could rebound. So he had skill, obviously, but the biggest thing for him was that he had no qualms about taking someone out if they messed with Mikkelsen. And to this day, he still holds the NBA record for fouling out. Still,
Oh, wow.
127 times he fouled out in his career. Now, mind you, that's in 630-something games.
Yeah.
Because his rookie season, they didn't record foul outs, how many times you fouled out. So we don't know for his rookie year. He played in 699 of a possible 704 games in his career, led the league in fouls committed 3 straight years during the Lakers' reign when they were winning all the championships.
Yeah, they're
Because
pretty
it's quite
hot right
simple.
now.
There were no flagrants, there were no that type of thing. So if someone cheap shot Mikkelsen, he knew that when he turned around, Mikkelsen was right there to punch him in the face or knock him flat or elbow him in the teeth. So that was essentially his role.
With Mikkelsen and the Lakers and how dominant they've been lately, I know, wherever you are right now in time, if you want to say you're in 2025, you may have forgotten how hot they are because they've, by the end of Vern Mikkelsen's playing days, he ended up winning 4 championships. And during that time, the Lakers themselves with George Mikan have just come off of a three-peat, the first three-peat, which is a fantastic feat because I don't know, if you've ever seen it, and not you, Rex, but the the 500 people, although it's just one person here that is watching it right now, that if you've ever seen it, but a three-peat and a back-to-back is pretty fantastic feat when you're going up against the best players in the world. So, yeah, with that said,
Well, you can see the Lakers front line. There's not going to be another front line like that probably for another 30 years.
yeah. No, but
But
yeah,
I'll bet you even in that era, at least one of those front line guys is Hall of Famers is going to be from Minnesota.
yeah. No, it's with the with Vern Mikkelsen and the do you? I mean, really, just to ask you, really was the power forward really just a copycat position of the center?
Well, if we can step into 2025 or 2015, really, what Golden State did by having Steph and Clay on the floor at the same time to open up the perimeter was the same thing that Kunlo was doing in 1950 with having Mikkelsen. You essentially have two centers, one strong side, one's weak side. So it's spacing, but because the lane was 6 feet wide at that time, having a low post player on either side meant a huge spacing advantage near the basket in the lane. So if if you're going to double team Mike, and you have to double team him with your two tallest players. It's like, there will probably be somebody, in the 80s and 90s that comes along as a shooting guard that is like really fantastic. And the next best guy on the team is pretty much guaranteed to be the small forward, because if you're going to double team a super athletic shooting guard, you have to double team them with your small forward because your point guard's too short. So that means that their small forward will have a lot of easy shots. Well, it's the same thing. If you're double teaming Mike and with two big guys, well, you put another competent center size player on the other side of the basket. There you go. Now you've created a spacing issue near the basket, which means easy buckets, which meant championships.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. And really, though, like, even though
in this day we have a proper public education system, so it would make sense to you. With the even though that it has, like you're talking about, into the 1980s and 90s, which still is the past compared to where we live now. With that, with the forward designation, with the power forward designation to be specific, even though it is largely based off of a copycat position of the center to be more of a secondary center, how innovative do you think that position is right now, moving into 2025? Because it seems that it's changed a lot over the last 70 years plus years. Yeah, as they started changing rules to try and emphasize the smaller guys farther from the basket, then mobility and perimeter play became the priority. So you couldn't afford to have two centers on the court. You had to be able to have someone that could move on the perimeter. And you're going to see a swing going back the other way, because now that you have guys like Wemby and Jokic, who play away from the basket for large portions of their game, you need that traditional center-like player on the court. You can't win without rebounds and rim protection. In rim protection today, they only think it means block shots. That rim protection means a lot more than just block shots. If you take up a lot of space inside and you keep players from getting to the rim because they know you'll throw them on the ground, or you have guys like Wes Unseld who were so fantastic at stepping towards a driving player and getting his foot into the position where he knew the plant foot of that driver was going to be, so it messes up the angle of their drive. That's rim protecting. That's
Absolutely.
keeping the ball away from your rim. The game is much. There's much more to it than the casual look at just looking at the stats and then what one particular instance leads to that one particular stat. There are 100 different things in basketball that are very valuable that there is no stat for.
This Victor Wembanyama guy, I know that, I guess along the string of events right now, which something like October, I don't know, 23rd. Is that what today is?
Is it
Something like
25th?
that. I don't know what day it is.
It's the 25th.
I don't know.
You're living in the past, man. It's the 25th.
I don't. I don't even know what century it is. Um, no, but
Last
no, but yesterday I was looking at some highlights. I know, but Victor Wembanyama, this new player, as of now, has had 9 blocks. He almost had a triple double with blocks last night, and why I find that interesting is because a lot of these highlights have these players that are supposed to be the greatest players in the league. One, Zion Williamson, on the Pelicans, shooting layups as Victor Wembanyama is playing defense straight up right in front of him, and he was getting blocked back to back attempts where Wembanyama would block it, and then it would get back to Williamson, and he'd put it right back up. And I think part of that is because of the uniqueness lately of somebody who is just so dominant physically, although he's not a particularly large person in respect to his thickness. It just seems that a lot of these players aren't used to playing against players that are nearly a foot taller than them and being able to do that. So it in ways, it seems that it may be smarter to go and take some jump shots and try to get over this guy in that capacity, although that's still hard, versus trying to get a basic layup on somebody who's a foot taller than you right in front of your face.
Well, it's easy, not easy. We're talking about the highest level of basketball in the world. So, but for another player of that caliber, it's really not that hard to get open shots on a guy that big. You just have to understand how to play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually play with 5 guys and you have cutters and you have back screens and all that type of thing, you run a guy, preferably a more stout individual, on the baseline. You run a backdoor pick for him. He comes to the other side of the lane and he sets a pick on Wembanyama on that side of the basket, and then the guy goes up. You pass the ball to the guy on that side. Just watch the 70s with Unseld and Hayes, and how many times Unseld would set just an earth-shattering pick as Hayes moved across the lane to get his position, and would do that turnaround jumper of his almost wide open because the guy trying to cover him ran into Wes Unseld trying to follow him across the lane. It's a team sport. If you play it as a team, it's not that hard to find open shots, assuming that your players are of the same caliber as the other team.
No, absolutely. And I was talking more so about how silly it was to do the same thing over and over, where it's not working against in a one-on-one basketball kind of style that Williamson was playing against Victor Wembanyama.
Well, that's because Williamson played 1 year at Duke. If he played 4 years at Duke, he would have scored on Wembanyama.
Yes.
because he would have been a much more intelligent player playing underneath the best coaching and, at that level of basketball. That's the problem that young people don't understand, young fans don't understand about this game in the 21st century is when you let kids go pro with, for a while there was no college at all. Now it's one and done. And in that one, it's actually not 1 year. They actually only have to go to school for one semester because by the second semester, the basketball season's over. And then they're gone. They've left school. So they're not getting an education. There's no reason for them to be there. And they're not there long enough to absorb any proper coaching. And they get to the NBA and you get the situation that you had in New York, back when Phil Jackson was the president and he hired, what's his name? The Laker point guard as his head coach, Fisher. And they asked him, because they were a horrible team. And they asked Fisher straight out, all of your success came with the triangle. Why aren't you guys running the triangle here in New York? And he said it straight out. These young kids coming out of high school and 1 year of college aren't smart enough. They don't understand basketball enough to run the triangle. That's why when you saw the teams that won with the triangle, they always got veteran players to come off the bench. Because players like Horace Grant, John Sally, Robert Parrish, those guys, they come off the bench because those older statesmen understand the game as well as the coaches, so they could run the triangle. But nowadays, no one's even smart enough to run it because they don't have the basketball education. They get by on pure, just raw athletic talent. And, guys that constantly practice just shooting, which you can do by yourself, but there's no teamwork.
So you're telling me people don't even wait till their draft class is available to get into the NBA anymore?
Nope.
Wow. No, but to bring it back into the 2020s, this is something that, and I think I've talked to you about it before, even before this has recently happened. But TJ McConnell, an undrafted 4-year great college player, got picked up by the Philadelphia 76ers, not to, for one reason or another. I think this was when they were tanking in the 2010s, just to try and keep it in line with my conversation of the of what time it is. But anyway, he went undrafted, was a fantastic college player, and then last year went to the NBA Finals and essentially, outside of Tyrese Halliburton, was the best player on the team. And he would have never played in the NBA if he didn't get drafted, signed by the 76ers, and was able to show his value in the pros for essentially nefarious reasons. Because they didn't draft him, they picked him up just to pick him up.
What they wanted was someone that understood the game.
Yeah.
If you have the main core of your roster is young guys that have never had the same teammate for 3 years in a row in their life, because they start off at a high school, they have obvious otherworldly talent, so then they transfer to a basketball factory, like, Farragut Academy or one of those, and then they go pro after one semester in college, and they are in their second or third year on a pro team. That's the most stable situation they've been in basketball wise. Constantly changing teammates constantly changing coaches, you don't learn anything. You don't get to work on anything team-wise. What they're able to do is you bring in guys on the bench, the practice players that those guys have to go against every day, to teach them the teamwork and show them the experience factor. If you have two highly skilled guys going against each other in practice every day, but neither of them is very experienced, you don't learn anything. But if you get one young, just uber talented player, but he has to go against a less physically gifted but much more schooled player, he's going to learn every day. Because at first, he's not going to be able to do everything he wants to do for the first time in his life. And he's going to be like, how is this dude stopping me? This guy wasn't even drafted. He can't do this, that, and the other. But what he can do is he understands how to play the game, and he knows how to negate a large part of your advantages. And that's why they picked those guys up. Now, as it turned out with that team in that situation, that guy ended up getting on the court at a very crucial moment. And having the experience he had, he understood his advantage. And the moment didn't overwhelm him.
Yeah. It was a shame. It was a shame for that finals, that recent finals with 2025 finals, where you have all these guys that are thought of as stars, and you have this undrafted guy who's really taken the reins of the team after their star point guard fell to an Achilles rupture. So it's just interesting that people don't talk about these guys, or people don't even give them a chance in respect to playing typically in this mid 2020s NBA, let alone for some time before it. When, and I think, being a layman, there's a ton of value to it, to having these guys play. Maybe not all the time, but like, to your point, at least to train people.
You have to have an advantage. That's how you play at a higher level, is you understand how to maximize your advantage and minimize your weaknesses. And with 500 players in the league these days, teams are able to draft on potential. And when they say undrafted, that doesn't mean the same thing it used to. Okay, back in 1985, the Knicks had the first pick in the draft and the last pick in the draft. They took Patrick Ewing, number 1. They took Ken the Animal Bannister with the very last pick. They both made the team, obviously. Well, obviously, Ewing did. But Bannister made the team, backup center and power forward. Played a few years, but there were like 12 or 16 rounds or something like that back then. Yeah. Now is there still 2 rounds, or is there only 1? I don't even know.
There's 2, but it's more or less
2 rounds. So there's only 60 draft picks.
Yeah.
So you're going to have, but there's 500 spots in the league. So you're going to get a large number of undrafted players. If I were coming out today, I would prefer to be undrafted, because then you get to pick where you go. And you're still going to sign $1 million contract, because that's the minimum.
Yeah.
But, back in the day, you had the college requirement, because the idea of a kid coming out of high school and playing as a professional athlete in the NBA was just ridiculous. And it's not because of on the court. They knew Lou Alcindor could have walked straight into the NBA out of Power Memorial. Everyone knew that. Guys like Wilt, obviously Oscar Robertson, these guys could just walk into the NBA out of high school if they had wanted to. They were good enough to on the court. But the idea of sending an 18-year-old out into the world with no supervision, treating him like a grown man, only means there's going to be trouble.
Yeah. I think that that is a problem for, looking into the future coming from 1950s basketball. That I can see that being a huge problem because everyone has just come from World War II. Everyone has just come up from the Great Depression, and it all means something. I can see in the future, in the mid 2020s, not to say that it means nothing, but there's not as much bearing behind it other than just whatever neighborhood you come from trying to get out of it. It's not the same on a, a national scale to be successful and to be able to maintain this job, especially when there's no guaranteed contracts versus these guys that get a 4-year guaranteed contract for $10 million if you're a first round pick.
Yeah, it's and then off of that, then it rolls into the situation of the the player, the game management, all that type of stuff. Because if I'm paying you, if I've already signed a contract with you that guarantees that I have to pay you 4 years from now, then you're not playing 48 minutes a game, 82 games, because your body will be broke down by the time we get to that 4th year, and I'll be paying you to sit at home in a cast. So we're going to manage how many minutes and how many games you play.
Yeah.
Because you're no longer, quote unquote, the talent like you would do with a singer or a musician or actor. Now you're a multi-million-dollar asset that I have to protect my investment because I've already guaranteed your money.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You got to take care of that. I didn't know $1 million even existed, especially in 1950. But anyway.
Yeah, I think that's how much an aircraft carrier costs.
Aircraft carrier said that TJ was cooking with just fundamentals. Players didn't know how to stop him because it looks foreign to Gen Z players.
That's why they're called fundamentals. He's absolutely right.
Yeah.
But it's funny because, I remember going back, people when the first time they'd see me would say I had horrible fundamentals. But then they'd see me like practice. They see me train, doing drills and stuff. And they're like, well, you can do the fundamentals. And I'm like, yeah, of course I can. And they were like, how come you don't play like that in a game? And I'm like, because that's how everyone plays in the game. I used to get a steal or two a game just because I would be at a basketball camp with the kid that was on the other team. And I saw him in the summer at the basketball camp working on fundamentals, doing the fundamentals. Coach telling him, do it this way, put that way. Look to this player when you're going that, you know what I mean? When you're coming down on a 3-on-2 break, you want to do a jump stop here and pass this way, hit the guy 45-degree angle. I knew all of that. So I knew what the other team was doing. I used to turn the tails, turn it back on them. That I would jump in a passing lane, they'd throw the ball right to me. Because I knew where they were passing it, because I went to the same basketball camp and listened to the same coaches. But I would intentionally not do it that way. So the other guys never knew what I was doing. But the ball would still get where it needed to get to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually recently, especially being, a multi-thousand-year-old person, is that I actually recently partially tore my patella tendon in my knee, meaning like a year ago. But because of how medicine is, they just identified it.
Well,
Anyway,
that happened to Wilt. That happened to Gale Sayers. That happened to Elgin Baylor twice.
yeah, it's pretty rough. I essentially, it feels like I have one leg in a lot of ways. Um, but my point with that is, or not my point, or yeah, my point with that is that I was shooting around with a basketball, and I used to play a lot more unorthodox. Not that I know a lot about basketball in respect to people that play, the professionals. Um, but when I was a kid, I would do layups off of my wrong foot. I would do layups off the right foot or whatever foot that I landed on. And it wasn't a conscious thing to say I need to, if I'm doing a right-handed layup, to do a layup off of my left foot. I would just do a layup on
Yeah.
whatever foot I was at. And then and I think it's helped in a lot of ways, but I think it's also hurt. Somebody along the way when I was playing in some men's league said you need to take a layup off of your left foot if you're doing a right-handed layup. And it's and and I haven't really done a right-footed layup in so long until recently, but it's also my left knee that's hurt. So I was like, wow, this can really get somebody off guard because they're waiting for you to do it off of the other foot.
Well, you want to know an interesting fact about that?
What's that?
When layups first became a thing, when you're first allowed to dribble the ball in the around 1895, 1896, when that was put into the rules, you actually would jump off the foot that you were shooting with that hand. So you would jump off your right foot if you're shooting right-handed, because you would use your left knee and your left arm to block the defender.
Yeah.
But as the game turned vertical and they started putting big tall guys under the basket to block the shot, then it came to be a point of you had to jump off the opposite foot because it meant you could shoot from, depending on your age and your height and everything, like a foot to 2 feet higher on your release.
Yeah.
And that's how that changed. The original fundamental layup, you did jump off the same foot as the hand you were shooting with. And you used the other leg and arm to block the defender.
Yeah. Pros and cons. Yeah, no, that's interesting. That's something, even though I'm a few thousand years old, never heard of. Has Vern Mikkelsen ruined modern NBA basketball?
Not at all. Far from it, because the game was getting so physical. You have these people that insist that the 90s and 2000s was the slowest and most physical time of the game, which is absolutely, completely wrong and easily proven. The 40s and 50s were by far the most physical, the most damaging with the injuries. And when was the last time you saw an NBA player get fouled so hard he was paralyzed and eventually died from his injury?
I think, God, I guess it must have been the late 50s. It's escaping my head, his name right
Maurice
now.
Stokes.
Maurice Stokes, yeah.
Maurice Stokes was elbowed in the head, went in, got a brain injury from it, ended up paralyzed, and then died decades later. Jack Twyman, one of the best men ever in the NBA, took care of him for the rest of his life. His teammate and best friend took care of him for the rest of his life. Wilt Chamberlain actually died in 1999. The root cause, no pun intended, the root cause of his death was cardiac arrest brought on by an infected tooth that was crushed by gosh, the name of the guy just jumped out of my head. He actually was a teammate of Mikkelsen and also played for Boston. Listikov, I think his name was.
Okay.
He got in many fights with Wilt when Wilt was young, and he elbowed Wilt in the mouth and knocked Wilt's teeth out. And Wilt never got his mouth fixed correctly. It caused him lifelong pain. And eventually an infection got in there when he was older. And that infection went to his brain, and that's what he died from.
Yeah.
But you never hear that in modern basketball. Guys dying from how hard they were fouled. You know, that's only in the 50s. Back in the 50s, they averaged 1 year 38 fouls per game.
Wow.
Or 38 free throw attempts. That's how often they were fouling the shooter. 38 free throw attempts a game. Nowadays, it's like half that. And they also had many more possessions back then. People think that it was just like no defense, just run and gun. They actually played harder defense, played more physical defense, more physical offense, and ran twice as fast and twice as much. But people want to totally negate that era. That era was harder to play than today. Today, they cater to the millionaires on the court. Back then, the only millionaire was the guy that wrote the checks that owned the team. And then half of them weren't millionaires.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way I understand it, living in the 1950s. That's the only way to play is run hard, play hard, and be physical.
Yeah, well, you got to understand, they didn't play like today. Today, you play basketball, you only play basketball. You play baseball, you only play baseball. When was the last two-sport athlete? 1990s?
Probably, yeah, for at least with basketball.
Yeah. I mean, back in the 50s, you had multiple guys that played 2 or 3 sports. And remember, the NFL played in leather helmets, y'all. Okay? And those guys would also play basketball.
Yeah.
And like you said, there were some guys that went straight from the United States Marine Corps and the United States Army in World War II and Korea, come back and then suit up and go play in the NBA. You think they were afraid to commit a foul?
Well, that's the thing that people don't understand is that life is pretty easy for most people. Even if you live in a bad neighborhood or there's some things that you go through, you got to think about being at war for a few years, of your life, because you're not coming back when you go over there.
Yeah.
You're there until it's done. You might get some rest, but you're not coming home.
But then again, we get that because we're 2 old military guys.
Yeah.
Kids that are watching today's sports, they don't understand that type of stuff. They think guys have it hard because they had to play, 40 minutes in 2 back-to-back games.
It's the worst.
Yeah. If you're a millionaire, yeah, no millionaire wants to sweat that much.
Yeah, at least until they're paid.
Yeah. But it's just a totally different time, and that's the thing. You can't even talk about the difference in the game unless you understand the difference in the times.
Exactly. And I mean, for guys like Vern Mikkelsen or Mikkelsen or Not them specifically, but the people that they played with and the time that they grew up with or grew up in, and going to Korea, living every day, out in whatever environment you're in, fighting for a lot of the time. It's not. They did get breaks over in Europe, but they're not going home and then coming back. Um, or Asia. Like, people don't understand that that's how life is, or can be,
Well,
or
one thing
was.
that I remember having a conversation with someone talking about the difference in times. I brought to their attention. You realize that George Mikan never took a jet on a road trip.
Yeah.
Okay, because they didn't exist yet. He flew on prop airplanes and on buses. Okay, that's how they had to travel between games. It was not. They had their own. The team had their own jet airplane and catered food. They don't even know. Who is Vern Mikkelsen? Vern Mikkelsen is the man that the term power forward was coined for. Just like his teammate Slater Martin was the first point guard. Those two terms came about primarily because of those players. Vern Mikkelsen was a hard-nosed player, 6'7", 230, in the aerobic era of basketball, where it was an actual sport where you actually ran. It was an endurance event. And he pretty much was Charles Oakley. If you watch Vern Mikkelsen's game and you watch Charles Oakley's game, they were very much alike.
Aircraft carrier.
Oh, also.
Thanks for our service.
Absolutely.
I was in the Roman Legionnaire.
Well, I'm one of the few that came back with Napoleon from Russia, but there's Vern Mikkelsen went to college at 16 years old. When he finished college, before going to the NBA, he had a master's degree in psychology. Back when he actually had, psych hospitals, And so he was very intelligent. But yet he played like a thug because that was the role they needed him to perform on the team. He could provide that for Mikan, so that's what he was paid to do. But the idea that, a lot of these guys are not very smart and they play like that, if you actually look at NBA history, some of the really rough and tumble enforcer guys were actually very intelligent guys. And they understood how to get in other people's heads, and that's how you do it.
Yeah.
If all your concentration is on putting the ball in the basket, well, I'm going to make you start thinking about, your next doctor's visit. And you're less likely to make that shot. That's how they played back then, because only the winners got paid, really.
Yeah.
All you got to do is go to Basketball Reference, look back in that era at the rosters of the worst teams, and look at them from year to year, and you'll see how the roster rotates. Because if you're a bench player on the worst team in the league, you're unemployed the next year. They're going to find someone else. They got to figure out how to win. They're not going to stick with a losing roster.
Rex, do you appreciate a Draymond Green or a Dylan Brooks?
Not exactly sure who Dylan Brooks is, but yes, Draymond Green. The only thing you need to know about Draymond Green is the star of the team and the coach of the team love him. That's all you need to know.
I know when we were on another channel, people would make fun of my takes for the Draymond Green is the glue guy of the Warriors. And I
Well,
don't I don't
absolutely. Half of their championships, he was their leading assist man, not their so-called point guard.
yes.
He led the team in assists during multiple championship seasons. Don't act like he's not talented. He's wildly talented.
Yes. And I had this and I've heard this discussion multiple times. And to me, it really doesn't make sense. Is that you need to be a star, quote unquote, in respect to your capability to as an offensive player and a defensive player for you to be one of the greatest of all time. So immediately that takes out somebody like Bill Russell. And not to say that Draymond Green is at the ilk of these other guys. Like he doesn't belong in the same breath, but in respect to him not being a great player because he doesn't score as much as
I think Bill
somebody like
Russell would
Steph
disagree
Curry.
with you
Yes.
because
Yes.
Bill Russell understood it's a team sport, and your team is only successful if every role is fulfilled. You
Phil
can't have
Gass.
weaknesses. You have to have. They had the guy that elbowed Wilt Listikov. Like I said, I can never pronounce his name. I'm sorry. But Wilt or Russell had him as a teammate. Wanted him as a teammate. They had Heinsohn as a teammate, who was a bull in a china closet. That was how he was actually described during his playing career. Those guys are essential. Guys act like the star, fans act like the star wins all on their own. He absolutely does not. In fact, a star will not win unless he has those valuable role players. People knock Robert Horry, calling him, he was a bench player. He started more NBA games than Bill Walton did, I believe. But he was a starter for like 5 or 6 straight years. And during the Houston championships, he was a starter. But they look at him in hindsight, he was a bench player. He only won 7 championships because he was lucky. It's like, it's not luck. Look, you're thinking of you walking up on a playground or you signing up down at the Y for a men's league. Okay, this is the highest level of sport. These are billion-dollar companies with million-dollar assets. Robert Horry was on 7 championship teams because the owners, management, coaches, and teammates on those teams said, we want Robert Horry. And to speak to how great he was, what is his nickname?
Big Shot Bob.
Big Shot Bob. Okay, he played with Kobe. Did Kobe have the nickname Big Shot? Did Hakeem have the nickname Big Shot? No, the guy on those teams that had the nickname Big Shot was the bench player Robert Horry. So if you got guys coming off the bench with the league nickname Big Shot, what are you criticizing, man?
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. Is that especially with such a moniker, if you lived in the 1950s, to me, that's as good as it gets. If you're the biggest thing, you know what I mean? It's something like you said, for people to live in hindsight and say, even though you had such a very descriptive and prolific name of your capability of why people like you, and you've won 7 championships. If you're called Big Shot, I don't understand what the discussion is. You are the guy.
In my opinion, and no one agrees with me on social media because no one on social media has any clue what they're talking about for the most part. You do have those that do here and there. Steve Kerr, Robert Horry, and when his time comes, Steven Adams should all be in the Hall of Fame because they perform their roles better than anyone in history of the game have.
Yeah, at the very least, yeah, that like all of them, I think. I mean, Steven Adams, the other two, absolutely. Steven Adams, I get what you're saying. But yeah, no, I get your point at the very least. Yeah. Like, so you got to fill gaps. You got to do what you need to do to be successful on your team. And Robert Horry and Steve Kerr were wildly successful. Steven Adams, I don't think has won an NBA championship yet. Not to say that doesn't mean he's a great player. I just don't know if it puts him in the Hall of Fame. But to your
Well,
point,
he's not done yet. But watch.
yeah,
If you go back and you actually do a deep dive, if you got an hour, go back, look at his stats, go back through Basketball Reference at individual games, not of his matchup, but of his main players' matchup. When with back in the glory days of the Thunder before last year, when they had the big three and he was a young player. Look at the games where they had a big matchup with Durant. Games where they tried roughing up young Durant. Games when they would go after, like lately, when they would go after last few years, Ja Morant. And see who the protector was, who kept the star healthy and on the court. And it was Steven Adams' presence.
Oh, I mean, I'm with you. I love Steven Adams.
Yeah, Udonis Haslem is another one. Now, he's respected in Miami, like, big time. I mean, the guys, you see, and that's the thing. Fans only look at stats and highlight reels. Okay, that doesn't tell you the game. Sometimes the most important, like, Ironback 1982, Dunbar High School in Baltimore. Best team in the country. They had 5 future first-round draft picks on one high school team. The Poets of Baltimore Dunbar. Reggie Williams was the National High School Player of the Year. He signed to go to Georgetown. They had a 5'3" point guard that went to Wake Forest named Muggsy Bogues, who was actually named the team MVP. Now, they had the National High School Player of the Year, but the MVP of the team, voted on by the team itself, was Muggsy Bogues.
Yeah.
Okay? When you're just watching, when the lights are on, just watching highlights, just watching, points per game and MVP votes and that garbage, you know nothing about the game. Watch what goes on in a game. Watch a game with Steven Adams and watch what he does. He does his job better than 99% of the guys in the NBA.
Yeah.
His job is not to put 35 points on the board. But he does his job as good as Maurice Lucas ever did, as good as Charles Oakley ever did, as good as Vern Mikkelsen ever did. He does that job. And you see, that's what I give respect to, because as my moniker says, I'm not a fan. I don't look at it that way. That's not how I've never watched a game in the last 40 years as a fan. For one thing, the easy thing to know whether or not you really know basketball, here's the self-check. Put on a game, watch 5 minutes of the game, and then ask yourself, what are you watching? Are you following the ball? Or are you watching what's going on away from the ball? If you're just following the ball, then you're just a fanboy. you know nothing about basketball, because you will learn nothing watching the ball. I never watch the ball. When the guys are coming down court, point guard's dribbling up, everyone's in front of the point guard and are crossing over half court, I'm watching the guys crossing over half court. I don't need to watch the ball. I know what he's doing, bringing it up. I'm not watching that. I'm watching what the guys are doing as they're getting in the offensive set and the defense is picking up their men and what they're trying to do defensively. Because I understand the game. I know what to look for. I can watch the movement of the players away from the ball, and I can tell you where the shot's going to come from. Because I can tell by how they're setting up and what they're running, where they're trying to get the shot from.
Yeah.
And what switches are the defense going to do to try to prevent it?
Absolutely. Aircraft carrier.
If you just follow the ball, you are a fanboy and you do not understand the game of basketball. If your eyes just stick to the bouncy ball.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll comment on that real fast, and I'll answer aircraft carrier's question. But especially being an off-ball player, for me as a post player, typically for my level of play and my size, to me, whoever the point guard is, who has the ball a large portion of the time, I don't care what they're doing. I want to know what I'm doing, pretending I'm playing in the game is doing. I want to know what that guy's doing. And that's even, I'm not saying that's a holistic approach to what you're saying, but even for a casual viewer, if you've played, for me, I'm interested in what I'm doing if I'm pretending I'm in the NBA. What am I doing? How can I use that to play better? If I can find something, if I'm smart enough to find something to play in my men's league per se.
Yeah. When I was learning how to play, I used to record games on VHS. Actually, the first ones were on beta. And I would watch an entire NBA game, usually the Knicks, 10 times. I would watch an entire game just watching the point guard for one team. And I'd watch what he did, whoever it was. I wasn't watching the particular player. I was watching whoever was playing that position. Because sometimes when a coach subs out and then brings in a different point guard, they're going to run different plays because that point guard runs different plays better, more efficiently. And in fact, sometimes that's why they'll go to a different point guard. So I'll watch the point guard position for Team A the whole game. I'm just watching that one guy. What is he doing when he doesn't have the ball? When he has the ball, what side court is he bringing it up? Is he bringing it up on this side? They're trying to get the ball, like to say to Ewing, okay, well, is Ewing going to post up on that side, or are they bringing the ball up on the opposite side and then working a shift to try and get the defense to miss out on a switch, with some screens? And I'll watch the whole game, and then I rewind it, and I'll watch the other team's point guard who's going against that guy, and I just watch him the entire game. What is he doing? What are they trying to do on offense? How is he defending what I just watched on the other? Then I'd rewind it again. I'd watch the shooting guard position. And I would go through all 5 positions, both teams, just watching that position for the whole game. And then for the rest of the season, I could sit with my friends watching the Knicks game, and I could say, oh, they're going to come down. They're going to go over here. They're going to go to Johnny Newman on the wing. Watch this. He's going to pump fake, get into the lane. He's going to dump it off the Ewing for a dunk. Bam, it happens. They're like, how'd you know that was going to happen? Because I studied their offense. And the other team, whoever's playing them, I've studied their defense before.
Yeah.
That's how you learn the game. Just watching the ball and watch some guy go between his legs 3 times and jack up a chest pass from 35 feet at the basket doesn't mean you know basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. Aircraft carrier. Why did I leave lights out sports debates? Really, because I work a lot, and there was a difference of opinion of content that uh, between me and Travis that I thought, for me, um, I didn't agree with some of the things that he wanted to do, and because he would, even though it's technically my channel, I mean, I'm not gonna like pull the rug out from under him, but I left it because it got to where it was, and under that name, and I just disagreed with how it was going, and I am working a lot. So after this show, I will be working for about a month straight away from my family. So I yeah. So I felt like I couldn't. Sorry, there's a rooster about maybe 15 yards away from me. Anyway, um, uh, but outside of that, yeah, I left because I didn't like the direction it was going for me, and that's just what it is. And I'm working a lot. I wasn't going to try and pull the channel out from under him. Um, Here's a second question. Dart, when will the Sunday panel with Robin, AOH, NMB, Hoop God be back? Sadly, never. Um,
Well, they still
uh,
have it. We're just
yeah,
not involved.
they still have it. Yeah, Robin and AOH they've continued the show per se. Or I wouldn't say the show because it's now their show because
Yeah.
it's wildly different at this point, but they still do a show together. NMB comes on there sometimes. Hoop God, I don't know. I've talked to him in text a few times. I don't know what the deal is. Um,
They said they
maybe
were going to get with me about me being on his show like many months ago and never happened. I don't know.
yeah.
I'm just
I
not
f-
into the whole debate thing. I'd rather educate than debate.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think debate is fun until you start getting down these weird rabbit holes where you're just debating for debating sake, where it's like I don't got time for that. Like if there's something I actually believe in, I'll debate it, but I don't want to debate something that just doesn't make sense just to debate. Like
Yeah.
to me, that's kind of dumb.
I'm going to have to bail out of here.
Yeah,
I have to perform the chauffeur duties.
absolutely. Aircraft carrier says I'm debate fatigue.
Yeah, well,
You are,
there's nothing to debate. If you love the sport, why is everyone arguing about it? Stop arguing about it. Enjoy all the players, all the coaches, all the plays. Embrace the rules as much as you can. I struggle with today's rules, but if you love the game, love the game. Stop arguing about the people that are in it because they're in it. You're not.
yeah. And I feel like if you're going to debate something, debate the positives. Don't debate the negatives. The negatives are in respect to who you think is the greatest. Okay, why do you think they're the greatest? And why do you think it's greater than somebody? Don't debate why somebody's worse than somebody else. Like to me, that's just that's a waste of energy. Like if
Yeah,
you want, if you have a passion to say I favor this guy for however you want to put it, my fanboy perspective, or or if it's more intellectual than that, I favor this guy for these reasons, and I have some sort of attachment to it. To me, that's fine. I don't. I want nothing to do with saying why somebody sucks more than somebody else. To me, that is. I'm. I'm not going to curse, but
well,
it
I
it
suck
it's.
because I have to leave. Got to get the
Yeah.
wife to work. All righty.
All right, everyone. Yeah, we'll shut it down.
All right.
What's
See y'all
old is
later.
new. Learn the game. Goodbye.